The largest lies I think that's been presented by the media goes back at least 5 decades. I think it's starting with vaccines. I think that moving forward, it's about what the presidents actually represented and what they actually served.
The biggest media lie is definitely that Donald Trump didn't win in 2020.
Biggest media lie is way too many to count, whether it's about the economy, whether it's about our foreign policy.
Sabemos que todo es mentira, eso que están diciendo que si le pagaron a una prostituta, ¿sabe? Todo es mentira, todo se ha descubierto. Hay hasta una carta diciendo que de la misma señora que todo es mentira.
The biggest media lie from my perspective is the January 6th riots.
Oh gosh, biggest media lie is that the news tell the truth.
The biggest media lie is that Trump's not president.
Biggest media lie is that Trump's not popular.
Biggest media lie is that Donald Trump did not win the 2020 election.
They all lie.
Biden won the last election. That's the biggest media lie.
They're trying to say that Biden won the election and he didn't. And it was disgusting the way it turned out.
COVID is the biggest lie.
Well, I agree with her. I think COVID was a huge, one of the most devastating lies that's ever been preyed upon the American public.
All right, so, thanks for gathering that stuff, guys. That was there at the Waco Trump rally. And I know what people are going to say. They can say, oh, those people, they're a bunch of Trump supporters. They don't have an education. Those folks will surprise you.
Yeah.
Those folks will surprise you, I promise you. They're pretty tuned in. But the other day on social media, on Twitter specifically, I said, what are some of the biggest events the media and society have swept under the rug in recent history? There was obviously Biden's laptop. There was Epstein. There was the Christmas parade rundown. There was, of course, 2020, the election. There was COVID. People mentioned treason. But the thing that concerns me, and again, Las Vegas and East Palestine, Ohio, people quit talking about it, right? Because, again, you've been told it's okay to quit talking about it. But, again, too many to list, Chad. There are way too many to list. Way too many to list. However, if I had to pick just one, I'd say the laptop. And then they went into some detail there. And so journalism and the legacy of corporate media is dead and gone. It goes in all this stuff. And so, but there's a lot of stuff that people have questions about. And so they say, well, these are, these people are just, they're conspiracy theorists or whatever. And listen, there's a couple of ways that, in the media, there's a couple of ways that you receive information, right? There's a hypodermic theory of journalism. Hypodermic. And that's just, the information is shot to you, right? Just like you receive it from a needle. And then you have the minimal effects theory. I feel like Glenn Beck right now. I know, well, sort of, kind of. He's way better at this than I am. But minimal effects, that argues that the media have little effect on citizens and voters, that they don't really have anything. They just, the newspaper effect. So in other words, you hear what the newspaper has to say, that's the hypodermic. But then as you discuss it, it just kind of plays itself off, and you're like, those guys, they don't really know what they're talking about anyway. And so it becomes a minimal effect. But then you have a cultivation theory. And I'm going to spell it out because I don't want to put cult theory, although I probably should. Cultivation theory is a hypothesis that media develops a person's view of the world by presenting a perceived reality. That's back with what I was saying. What we see on a regular basis is our reality. Media can then set norms for readers and viewers by choosing what is covered or discussed. That's why a lot of these local news affiliates, if you'll watch, 50 of them from across the nation, they're all reading the same script from the same teleprompter. You've probably seen the video where stuff like that happens. So in the end, the consensus, is that media has some effect, even if the effect is subtle. So what has to happen is the media has to raise the bar. They have to sensationalize everything. What is it? If it bleeds, it leads. Because here's the deal with the 24/7 news cycle. If it's not making money for the network, we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about it. Because again, you guys don't want to hear me talking about hypodermic theory and minimum effects theory and cultivation theory. You want to see somebody bust their head jumping off of a high dive on social media. That's fun. So what the media has to do is they have to frame the story. They have to frame the story. So they won't get into it. You can get into episodic framing when a story focuses on the isolated details or specific rather than broadly looking at the whole issue. See, these days we've gotten away from episodic. I'm going to write that down because some of you might take notes. Episodic framing. That's when I'm just going to tell you the facts. I'm going to tell you what happened. And then you can determine what it is that you need to take away from that. Or we can do thematic framing. And what happens there is you take a broad look at an issue and you skip the details, or at least a number of them, and you look at how the issue's changed over a period of time and what's led to it. For example, you deal with the way you see race or socioeconomics or other generalizations. This is when the media is actually predisposing the viewer or the reader to a particular perspective on a subject or issue. So if a newspaper article focuses on unemployment and struggling industries and jobs moving overseas, then the reader's going to have a negative thought of the economy.